Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Carl.
Jess, how are you doing?
I'm doing so well, thank you. And
Good,
yourself?
good. Yes, well, it might look like a tag team effort, sorry. The plan...
I'm going to leave when he starts preaching, I promise.
You're so welcome. Look, you're invited to stay up
I'm
here
okay.
while we preach. But, kind of like what we've done in the last couple of weeks during the Garden Work series, we thought it would be great to conduct a bunch of interviews before the sermons through our next series for the next 4 weeks. It's a 4-week series over 6 weeks because, people run on Sundays and things like that. So it's going to be spaced out, as you've heard. But we're going to interview a bunch of people every week. Some of them are from partner organizations that we partner with. Some are heading up ministries within our church. Others are just involved in the justice space in their own personal capacities. And so we're kicking off with Jess today.
Yes.
Jess, I've said your name a bunch of times, so everyone knows that.
Hi.
But who are you beyond JESS, and maybe tell us a little bit about your involvement with Biblical Justice and Common Ground, because you've been doing that over the last couple of months or year or so.
Hi, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name's Jess, and I don't wear this T-shirt as a choice. I am on the Next Gen thing, while I do love it. So I was originally brought on to the Common Ground Sea Point team to head up something called Next Gen, which is our kids' ministry. And about a year ago, Paul approached me and was like, would you want to tackle something called biblical justice? And I'm like, absolutely. Because in my personal life, I'm a huge social justice advocate, and it's something that really sparks my interest. But it's been really interesting that over the last year, my idea of what social justice is has radically changed, and I'm excited for other people to go through an experience like I've gone through.
Brilliant. That leads us on to the second question, which is, we're kicking off this series today.
Yep.
In your understanding and your involvement, what's kind of led us to preaching the series for the next couple of weeks, which is actually more than just a preaching series, which we'll get into just now.
100%. I think, so when we initially tackled the Biblical Justice Project, we kind of looked at where our church is situated within the context of our city and the social justices that were plaguing the people within our community. And realizing that we are not experts, we decided to branch out to organizations that were already doing incredible work in the spaces where we wanted to have influence, and we reached out to them and we saw how we could partner, and that whole process resulted in something called In Sea Point As It Is in Heaven, which is an evening that a lot of you attended. And what we were trying to do there is commission our attendees to be like, these are amazing organizations that are doing wonderful stuff. We will do our own projects, but you as congregants can go and donate your time, your talents, and your physical money to be able to do that. And what's really awesome is there's been amazing connections that has happened as a result of that. I know that there's someone from the College of Cape Town that's linked up with Bridget from Early Childhood Development, and they've got this whole training program that they're kicking off. Bastian, who's in the audience, he's going to be interviewed later. He's using kind of his PhD research skills to look at the context of Sea Point specifically and how we can serve best. And while that evening was amazing, we felt like the best way to equip and disciple our community was, what does biblical justice mean to you in your context with the skills that you have? And I think we had a lot of conversations of what that can look like, and we said, actually the best way we can serve everyone is to create this series that will have the devotionals, kind of practical stuff that it's been through life group, but to really help people understand, what does biblical justice mean to me? So that's kind of where it came from.
No, that's cool. And you may have touched on this, but if you want to flesh anything out more, and why have we chosen to do the series?
So we've just come off the back of a God and Work series, not God and Work, God and Work. And we have this incredible resource on our website. So if you haven't checked it out, I'd really recommend that you do. It's got the sermons, the slides, the podcasts, really awesome recommendations. And in the last preach that Paul was talking about, he was talking about how we build. And he was speaking to this idea that in our workplaces and maybe in our personal lives, so much of who we are is about project self, and it's how do I become a better person, and how do I become a better Christian? And it was just a fresh commission to be actually, we're blessed to be a blessing. We're called to not make our names great, but to make God's name great. And we do that by loving people, and not just loving them, like loving them extravagantly and moving towards people who are unlike us. So we just felt like if we are really blessed to be a blessing, and if we are really called to love our neighbors, and if we are called to all of that stuff, then we need to give people practical ways that they can do that within the context of their city.
No, I love it. And I love what you said there around like the extravagant love. I mean, I just read this morning, Jesus feeding the 5,000 in the Gospel of John, but you see it every time he's doing something. He doesn't just like cover the bases. He's like, and then they had to gather up all the leftover stuff. I just love that you highlighted that word.
To the edges.
To the edges.
All the way to the edges.
All the way.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning, you mentioned when the opportunity to step into the space here came on the table, you were like, yes, I'm keen, like super keen. Tell us a little bit more about that in terms of what has justice meant to you, and where has it showed itself up in your life and things like that.
I really don't say this lightly, that this process has transformed my life in a way that I think it's transformed my life in a way that how I understand loving God and loving people. And I think for me, for myself, I try to have the vision of my life where how do I love the Lord, my God, with all my heart and soul, and how do I love my neighbor as myself? And I do that as sort of like a framework to make decisions. And I realized that like loving my neighbor as myself was a part that I don't think I really understood as well. And I think what this series is, or this project has done for me is that like I'm starting to ask myself the questions of like, who is my neighbor, and what am I doing for my neighbor, and what does that practically look like? And I want to give a practical example which helps to, I think, flesh this out better. So how I've seen it kind of outwork in the projects that we've been looking at is we have a project with Straatwerk. So Straatwerk is this amazing organization that hires homeless people off the streets, and they give them employment, but overlaid with that employment is this really awesome opportunity for them to be developed and integrated meaningfully back into society. And we as a church, off the back of In Sea Point is in Heaven, decided, okay, cool, what can we do to use them as an organization to help our city? And so we decided, let's clean the streets, fund the cleaning of the streets around our church. Awesome. And when we were thinking about that initially, we've been speaking about something called the redemptive edge for the last 2 months, and I'm going to quickly see if I can explain it. So it's kind of like concentric circles. So the first circle is exploitative, the next is ethical, and the next is redemption. And I think in a project like Straatwerk, we could be safe to say, okay, cool, our church has moved from exploitative to ethical. We've done the right thing. We've cleaned our streets. But I think what biblical justice and the lens of moving stuff to the edges, like we've been speaking about, is like, can we clean all the streets? Is that something we can do? Is that something that we as people can ask of the people around us? And so we trying to meet with businesses and the city and property developers to be like, okay, cool, we've done the ethical thing and that's wonderful, but how can we move towards that redemptive edge and push it to the edges of what that looks like for restoration for everyone, not just for like our little city? And so that's why it's transformed my thinking. I think I always try to look at the lens of like, it's not our sole responsibility to clean the streets. Let me mention like it's not ours, but can we be the kinds of people that ask those kinds of questions like, why can't we clean all of the streets in Sea Point? Why can't we?
Brilliant. No, so good. Last question, Jess, and then you can go and do what it says on your T-shirt. What can we expect from the next couple of weeks, the series?
I think I just want to preface it with, we in no way want you to feel guilty. It's not about making you feel bad. It's not about saying that like biblical justice is now this thing that you have to add on this long laundry list of being a good Christian or a good person. I think our heart for it is that if we are wanting to build in our city, and if we want to really love our community, and if we want to move to those edges that we were speaking about, then biblical justice flows as a result of that. Biblical justice is a framework that you see things from. And I think we think that if the city sees the church pouring love out to the poor and the vulnerable, then we get to see little parts of heaven. And I think that's why we had initially called our first biblical justice meeting that in Sipho as in heaven, because we want the city to know that we care about the poor and the vulnerable like God and like Jesus continues to show us in his word.
Brilliant. Jess, thank you so much. That's super helpful. Really appreciate it. Yay.